Hello and warm welcome to Politics Today, and in this programme we shall be discussing the migrant crisis, and we'll also be discussing the public outrage at the British government, who seems to favour the migrants over British nationals. And to talk about this national crisis, I'm joined today by Helen Spiby-Vann from the Christian People's Alliance, together with Melanie Simmons, editor of Heart newspaper. I should also introduce you as my dazzling guests with your dazzling jackets on the programme today. Melanie, great to see you on the programme, and again we are indebted to you for your excellent newspaper, your hard work and dedication through Heart newspaper. Just share with us what our viewers can expect, because currently we're on the August-September edition, and then after this programme you're going to be working very hard to actually then produce the October-November edition.
Yes, well, thank you. So we don't actually have that many of the August-September paper left. We had a cover about the hostages finding faith in a captivity, and I really felt the Lord wanted that, and that's kind of opened some doors with the Jewish community, in fact, even though I think twice about putting it in a public place. I was in a left-wing cafe yesterday, they had a couple, anyway, I thought, dare I leave a copy here because of the climate, how it is now. We've got a big article on AI, the pitfalls and some of the background to it, and other articles. Britain has got to pray, you know, we're in a dire state spiritually, and yeah, people tell me it's a good read.
Excellent, very good. And Helen, it's great to see you back. I know that you've been enjoying yourself up in the Lake District, but share with us some of the work that you're doing with Christian People's Alliance, particularly this week now as our members of Parliament are back in Westminster, and we are seeing this political cycle start all over again as we prepare for the new political year that lays ahead.
Thanks, Simon. Yes, well, we've got two important pieces of work that we're focusing on at the moment at Christian People's Alliance. We're planning for our annual party conference, which this year is in Hitchin, on Saturday the 4th of October, so everybody is welcome to come along. Also, we're preparing for local elections next year in London, and I'm reminded of the last time, I think there was a councillor resigned not far from where I live in one of the wards. We had a candidate standing, and I remember I supported her, and we went to the election count together, and the team Labour were there in full force, and I remember hearing one of them actually commenting. He said something like, "Who on earth would vote Christian?" And I tell you, that really stirred me. I thought, yes, we really do need to stand up as Christians. We need to stand up for the Lord's values. And there's never been a more exciting time than now actually to do that. And the stakes are very high.
Very good. And Melanie, please give us your thoughts on the migrant crisis that it seems to be engulfing our government, and one that's also endangering the kind of social cohesion of our society and nation. And what we've witnessed in recent weeks, particularly with the mass protests outside the migrants' hotels in Epping, and other places, is that this is something that is stirring up the British people and actually enraging them, because it appears that the government is favouring the migrants rather than British nationals themselves, and there is so much evidence for that.
Yes, we're in a dangerous place, and as Christians we've got to be extremely discerning, very discerning. It's natural to want to be on the side of people who do not want their daughters being molested or attacked, but we also have to be extremely discerning about how, as Christians, we are going to be labelled. There's lots of labels flying about. For instance, if you stand up outside these and protest outside the migrant hotels, you've got the situation where apparently the police bust in the Antifa people, and there's a labelling going on. They're assumed to be racist because they don't want their daughters to be attacked and molested. Now, I'm not sure how long the migrants have been in that hotel, but it is the government's responsibility to be dealing with this. And by the same token, we don't want people who have not been accepted into society to then be put in the midst of residential areas in houses of multiple occupation. But talking about social cohesion in a funny way, amongst Indigenous people, whatever skin colour, I am sensing a new unity. Now, yes, as you're saying, white van man is seething, but there is oddly enough, not that odd, but there is almost a reassertion of masculinity amongst our men because they are realising a sense of the importance of protecting their womenfolk. So we've had years of feminism and all the rest of it, but now men who are fathers and husbands or would-be are realising that there's a kind of confidence about them that I'm seeing.
And of course the rise in patriotism as well, with so many English flags and British flags being flown. And Helen, I just wondered if you could just give us your thoughts on this excellent article that was written by The Telegraph on Monday the 1st of September. Ludicrous migrant family rule pushing councils to breaking point. So it says here that relatives coming back to Britain can claim benefits immediately and don't even have to speak English. Once granted refugee protection, they can immediately seek to reunite their families. Unlike other European countries where newly granted refugees have to wait up to 3 years before being able to bring over their families, there is no time limit in the UK. And the article goes on to say that immigration rules also mean, unlike with other visas, family members coming to the UK are not required to demonstrate that they have the necessary accommodation or income to be able to live in the UK without claiming a universal credit or housing benefits. And there's also no requirements that they have to speak English. I mean, surely again, we're seeing with this government a two-tier immigration system, and it's breaking.
Yeah, it's very alarming. I think it's worth just going back to the A and unpacking it from the beginning. I've listened to quite a lot of different voices of supported migrants, refugees, and it's interesting how I've not actually heard this particular story before. I don't know if it's a new thing, but there was one man who I knew from Afghanistan 5 years ago because he was working for the British government when the Americans pulled out of Afghanistan, the Taliban took over. He basically was at great risk, so he applied successfully, he got a British residency. But to this day, he has not been allowed to bring any of his family. He was a young man. So for example, it's not everybody's experience. Now, the thing is with the refugee family reunion pathway, it's for spouses and children under 18. It's no consolation. I'm not saying it's any consolation. There's, as you say, over 20,000 of these visas. I got a bit of information on this. So over 20,000 family reunion visas were granted in the year ending 2025. But if we have a look at the bigger picture and we include all the people who were receiving an asylum-related permission to stay, in 2024 it went up to what looks like more than 80,000 in total. So it's absolutely astronomical, and there's a big sharp increase from 2023. It's leapt up at least two, maybe more than two and a half times in 2024. Now, Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has said she's going to tighten the rules on families coming to here, the spouses and the children, because in Germany and Austria they've cited that there's a strain on the resources, and I think that's what we're experiencing here. Strain on the resources. Sensible decision is to become not accepting as many of the family members on that particular pathway.
Absolutely. And Melanie, aren't we really seeing the government aren't we actually seeing the British government implementing the kind of globalist agenda here with the UN policy of open borders, open doors to mass illegal migration for the purposes of destroying the nation state and weakening this nation? We've seen this happen under the Biden administration over 4 years, and we're seeing it happen here. And now it's reached a point where our society is at breaking point, and also it's creating public unrest, public anger, particularly where the government seems to be prioritising these mass illegal immigration into the country whilst ignoring the needs of the British people themselves. And this is what is getting people so angry and upset about.
Yes. I mean, I've been thinking about this quite a lot recently because you see all this, you hear it, you see it on social media, on YouTube. Ordinary citizen journalists are going around filming. There was one filming at a migrant hotel in the Midlands or the North somewhere recently, and he saw the police protecting it, and there was an NHS nurse going in a car to see if any of the residents needed anything, and people outside are struggling to get a GP appointment. We've got very long NHS waiting lists. We don't have the infrastructure to support new people, and that's not being racist, that's the fact, and that's what people are getting upset about. And the cost of the migrant hotels, apparently it's just been brought down to 5 million a day. Well, but it's absolutely extraordinary. Apparently in Greece, they've changed their policy. They're putting new illegal migrants into sort of warehouse or somewhere unpleasant, and that's really made the boats drop off, the number of boats coming over. There's a huge concern that there isn't the political will to deal with this. There wasn't with the last government, there isn't with this. If they had the political will, they would find a way. They've got enough recourse to lawyers, to clever civil servants, etc., etc. They should be able to find a way around it, but there doesn't seem to be the political will. And I actually think that as this government that we've got is a kind of chastisement, and I'm quoting Pastor Chris Wickland here, I've been listening to a fair amount, and I believe that because of the sin of our nation that we've ended up with this government, which is fairly brazen in their own private lives and the things they just get away with, and they have less political will, but we ask ourselves why the successive governments haven't tried to stop this. And there is this danger, which now the public is seeing, that we cannot cope and our whole system is creaking under it. But where it is so dangerous is whether that people are almost being tempted to overreact. We've got to be so careful that we as Christians are not being played in this. We need to tackle this as a spiritual issue, and think very carefully which marches we go on, if you are led to go on a march.
I think that's very sensible, and that's a very good observation you make there, Melanie. Of course, what it's deliberate and it's designed to destroy the nation state so that we can be absorbed easier into a kind of more of a one world government, that's for sure. But the reality is that the Labour government are going to have to wake up to this crisis, because this poses an existential threat not only to our nation, our society, but also to the Labour Party as well, because their MPs will not get re-elected next general election. So the sooner Starmer wakes up and realises that at stake is his own political future and that of the Labour Party, then we might see them taking action. But Helen, give me your thoughts as well, because the Telegraph also reported this week, and they contrast between this family immigration system that's set up to help migrants that come over here, that they've been then granted refugee status and are allowed to bring their families over. But if you have a spouse who's foreign and you want to bring her or him to the UK, then you have to prove that you have earnings over 29,000, and you've also then got to prove that you will not be dependent on the state for any handouts. How is this fair?
Yeah.
How is this fair, particularly when you have British nationals who have a foreign husband or foreign wife and they want their partner to be with them living in the UK? They've got to prove that they are earning 29,000. They speak English, and yet these families coming over, they're coming over with full benefits from us, the taxpayer, at our expense. And yet families who are wanting to bring loved ones over can't, because they don't meet that financial threshold.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Simon. And I remember a couple of years ago, I think Rishi Sunak was even suggesting it should be 39,000 the threshold. I'm not sure when it's going to jump up to that, but the reason why I remember is because they ended up on a WhatsApp group with people who were in that exact position, Brits who wanted to bring the spouse over, because I was supporting somebody at the time who was in that position. And we have to remember that these people who are in that position have already given up a lot, because of the rights of other people in the UK. So for example, if you want to bring over somebody, it's not fair that the rest of us should actually, because of your choice, that other people should actually pay. So people have already accepted that they're going to have to make personal sacrifices of their own to bring over somebody and they accept we have to make sure we can look after them, accommodate them. And so obviously when people are just coming in without having to do anything, it really is so unfair and so unjust. I mean, I've seen couples who, for example, supported a couple who she wanted to bring her spouse over here, but she didn't have enough money. Actually, in the end, you're faced with a choice, aren't you? You either go and live in the country of origin where your spouse is from, or you have to be able to afford, or you break up. In the end, they had to break up because she didn't want to live there. So you see, young people they're not used to making these decisions. They don't understand what privileges they've got. And when it's actually quite a good discipline. How much do I love that person? Am I prepared to give up my British citizenship? Because that might be what it takes. And in a way, it's good because the relationship, if it can't get past that first post, it's not necessarily going to be sustainable anyway. So then we have other Brits who can afford to bring in. I've supported couples that she could afford to bring a spouse here from overseas, but then I remember getting a call, this dear friend called up, it's not fair, you know, because we've got to pay all this money, a couple of £1,000, visas, paperwork, the rest of it. And I said, look, you know, the British people, we've actually, our relatives, ourselves, we've made sacrifices. This is where we are. Where we are and who we are because of what we've been through, the sacrifices we've made. I said, a few £1,000s to buy in, to be part of the family, to put into the pot, it's cheap at half the price. Double the price, sorry. It's a good thing. So, but the worst thing that I've seen, which is an abomination, is British citizens actually breaking the law to bring people in here illegally and feathering their own nests.
Yeah, of course, and this is why we, the taxpayer, are having to face that burden. Manly, give your thoughts on the Home Office figures that's been reported by the Daily Telegraph. They say the Home Office figures show that in the year to March, there was a record of 20,000 family visas granted to children, wives or partners of refugees to join in Britain. I mean, how much is that costing us, the taxpayer, and how much of that small pot of money that the government has is not going to be spent on education, health, infrastructure, transport, improving our roads, investing on our military to protect ourselves, but this money and resources is just being given to the migrants. So when you look at this crisis as well, I mean, you can understand why there is so much public anger, and how much does it cost to host 20,000 people coming over to this country who will not be supported by those migrants come over here because they don't have jobs and they're not working. And again, this is more of a burden on the taxpayers, is it not?
Yes, and going back to your previous question to me about how most of the migrants are young men from Islamic backgrounds and nations, their wives are not going to be working, they're not going to be contributing to the economy. They're in their culture.
Not these people either. Yes,
well, this is what I mean. So I mean, the dependents who are going to be brought over, they are not going to be economically active. Now, I'm not saying that that's essential, but in fact, most of our birth rate is going down because our young women go out to work and you need 2 incomes to get a home. Whereas part of the anger, as you're saying, is because these people are being given homes. There was one group of migrants that I felt a lot of compassion for, which Helen mentioned, and they were the Afghans who'd been working for us, and I thought we treated them very badly. There's also the issue with the Gurkhas a few years ago, which Dame Joanna Lumley espoused, and I was on their side as well. But in this article that you refer to about refugee family reunion visas, they now account for more than a quarter, 26.9% of all family visas. That's up from just 6.7% in the year to March 23. So they've gone up to a quarter from 6.7%. The highest are Syrians, so they're Islamic countries, at 4,700, Iranians at 3,900, Afghans 2,100, I'm rounding up the figures, Eritreans at nearly 2,000 and Sudanese at 1,400. So these are large numbers. They are from a culture which basically is very different to ours, and I would say as a nation, as anyone, we tend to be more sympathetic to people who seem more similar to us. In the Second World War, when the Jews came over, the ones we did allow in, they were Europeans. There was a sympathy.
The only Jews we allowed in was the Kindertransport. Those children didn't allow the parents of those children to come over. They perished in the Nazi death camps, while their children had a new life in this country through the Kindertransport, but they were never united with their families or their parents.
And there was a sympathy to the Ukrainians because they seemed similar to us. But this is a completely different culture that we are bringing in.
No, absolutely, on such a huge scale as well. And give your thoughts on what has now become the kind of epicenter of this migrant crisis over the last couple of months, particularly this summer in Epping in Essex, where we see the big protests taking place against 138 migrants who are being held in the Bell Hotel. And of course, they won a court order essentially saying that this was a hotel, but it has then been turned into a migrant centre, and there's no legal basis to do this, so it had to be closed. And then the Home Office then launched a legal appeal against this, and that's been overruled, so effectively those migrants can stay there. And even the kind of judge involved in the case essentially said that the rights of the migrants are more important than the local residents. And that is the sense of feeling that British people are getting and understanding that this government and our legal system favour these mass illegal immigration into the country than they do those that are paying taxes who observe the laws of the land and contribute to this nation.
Absolutely right, Simon. And we can see the checkered history. And in a way you could see, well, this is a democracy, so we do want to listen to different sides. So, you know, we have backwards and forwards. They got the planning permission was rejected. They closed, they opened, they closed. It went to court, it went to court. So there's different stakeholders here, each vying for different rights, protecting rights of the different groups. So you have the Home Office looking after the migrants, you have the council looking after the residents. And actually, absolutely right, there's something absolutely wrong with the system when the local people, the residents, actually end up with the short straw. The people who've invested and made sacrifices are the ones who end up, their rights are completely ridden over, roughshod, ridden over. So the planning permission side is important. You know, if there's a property owner wants to change the use, obviously like everybody else it should be applied for. If it's turned down, it's turned down. If the Home Office have nowhere to go, if that particular hotel is not useful anymore, can't use it, go somewhere else. Interestingly, I found out about a migrant hotel which was opposite the food bank that I used to be part of. We didn't know anything about it and there was no trouble, except one time when a Tamil family who were very frightened came over to reach out to help for us. I don't think they felt safe in that migrant hotel. I mean, you can imagine if you're fleeing Islamic persecution and you end up in a migrant hotel with your family.
And a lot of Christians are facing the same problem.
With a lot of Christians, yeah. And then you end up in a migrant hotel which has got a lot of Muslims in it as well. And there isn't sort of an understanding in this country of the dangers of Islam. You could end up being targeted. So they were quite frightened. The daughter, actually 12-year-old, she could speak some English, she said, if we were to go back home, we would be killed. Their lives were completely in danger. Now, I've got to remember that these migrant hotels were opened in lockdown. Now, I remember specifically seeing the streets were empty of homeless people. And everybody thought, oh, that's good, there's no homeless people. They've all been looked after. They'd all gone into the hotels. But actually, on the face of it, what looked like an improvement was not an improvement because nobody's tackling the root causes of homelessness. Same with the immigration crisis. If you put people somewhere, you're not tackling the root cause of the problem whatsoever. So, you know, I think it's funny, Melanie mentioned there was a slight improvement when it looked like whatever help was being offered was going to be not so good. So when we had the Rwanda scheme on the horizon, suddenly we didn't have as many takers. And I think we should probably actually focus on disincentives rather than incentivising this. So it's part of the solution for the problem.
Absolutely. We're down to probably about 3 minutes left of the programme, so I need to wrap up. So I've got two questions in one for you, Melanie. The first thing is, isn't it actually appalling that we, the taxpayer, are actually paying 32,000 asylum seekers to stay in 210 hotels in this country? And if we look what's happening on the continent of Europe, in the Canary Islands and Spain, they've had 47,000 migrants come and invade their islands, and now they want to declare a state of a national emergency. So we're reaching levels that if the continual rate of illegal migration continues to flow in this country, that this poses a major security threat for our country. Our country's identity is under threat as well. And it's not saying that we are racist, we're discriminating against other people. Of course, we want to help those who are facing persecution, who are being persecuted, and to provide them safe haven. But this looks like a kind of invasion that we're actually seeing. How imperative is as Christians that we really need to pray into this, because we could come to a situation in the next few years where it's a choice of the cross or the crescent in this country.
Yes. We've got to remember our battle is not against flesh and blood.
Amen.
We need to be praying, repenting, fasting, praying against the spirit of Islam trying to take over this nation. That's our main battle. We cannot hate the migrants. Another prayer of mine is that Christians will now be able to start reaching them. We don't want, one of the conspiracy theories is that we've got a UN army being built up in our midst of thousands of these trained young men who are being trained overseas. That's just one of the theories floating about, which if you look at the comments on some of the YouTube videos, that's what people are believing. But we have certain weapons, and only we can wield those weapons. We have to pray against the spirit of Islam trying to take over the nation. We have to repent of the 10 million babies that have been aborted in this nation, which is being replaced by other young people. Who not of our choosing, but we chose to get rid of the babies that God was giving to couples. So we've got to pray about that. One thing which you didn't ask me actually was briefly about the Royal Navy. They have no appetite to police the Channel, and it would have to be there'd have to be a political agreement with France, because they'd be going into French waters. They did so, and also they under maritime law, UN maritime law of the sea, they have to help those who are in distress when they come over in these rickety boats.
So Melanie and Helen, thank you so much. You've both done an excellent job on Politics Today. And I want to thank you for watching this programme at home. There is no doubt that our nation is facing an existential threat posed by this mass illegal migration into the country. We have to be discerning in these times, but we also need to be praying for our nation, because our nation is in peril. We face another battle of Britain in 2025, and we need to win this battle, but we win it through prayer, fasting and intercession. So thank you for watching Politics Today.